CanSat has a radio on board which sends a signal to a receiver that was plugged into my laptop. The data is then saved as a very long CSV file which I import into my program. It's fun to look at but not very useful since I want to make cool graphs that look like this and this. So I got to work indexing the file into arrays which correspond to each of the values we were measuring, such as temperature and pressure. It uses for loops to iterate through the file until all the data has been sorted, and it kind of works like a traffic conductor controlling which cars pass through and where, or a conveyor belt that sucks up particular items and send them to appropriate location. After this was done, I used matplotlib to create some cool functions which make animated graphs from the data. Since this simply wasn't enough, I then decided to make a graphical user interface which displays the graphs upon a button being pressed. This was only the beginning though, since I had to consider how extreme temperatures, high altitudes and pressures impact the survival of humans. Our project goal was to determine whether the values we collected would constitute a habitable environment if we were on an exoplanet. In practice, this meant reading scientific papers about what happens to the human body in extreme conditions, and then using the values I found to create a function which the data is passed through. To create the mobile app, I decided to use React Native and JavaScript. This turned out to be a complete headache, and I felt like the red guy from Inside Out. I had a very steep learning curve because I had to make the app in less than a week. The little error messages suddenly became the bane of my existence and had me questioning why I even bothered to make an app on a daily basis. But eventually I got there, and you'll see the final product shortly. I used Figma for the initial designs, and I found it pretty straightforward to use and easy to pick up. My first design is a little odd. I have no idea why the astronaut icon is moving around like that. The second design was much more similar to the final outcome, and when I first started development, the app looked like this. It's crazy to think that it only took a few days for it to become this. I also liked the web view of the graphs, and I think they look a lot more aesthetic than the Python graphs. The final app has a real clean feel to it and looks really professional. I am honestly so proud about how quickly I picked up the right skill sets, especially considering I wasn't familiar with JavaScript. I'll definitely be making more apps in the future. Don't get me wrong, this was no easy task, but I think my prior experience with programming in other languages definitely helped. We had a few deviations from design, but we opted for the professional look in the end. There's obviously still a lot of improvement to be made, and I'm only at the tip of the iceberg, but I think this was pretty good for a first project. Using the CO2 readings we collected in York, London and Chelmsford, I made a map which predicts CO2 levels across the country. I downloaded a CSV file from World Population Review and created a bunch of dictionaries. These work by having key value pairs. The town name was the key in one example and the population was the value. This meant I could call up a town and the program would return the population. I then compared populations from the database with those of York, Chelmsford and Southwark, which is in London, and then used the percentage difference to extrapolate CO2 levels. It actually turned out to be really accurate, which I'm very pleased about. Overall, the project was a blast, pun intended, and I learned an astronomical amount, from how rockets work to the internal operations of a satellite company. Beyond this, I got to meet some amazing people and have made some awesome friendships along the way. It was a real treat to be able to explore the beautiful historic city of York, and I definitely recommend anyone still in school to get involved. It was an incredible experience and really pushed and challenged me. The sky truly is the limit.